Welcome to COASTER-net Uncut.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of COASTER-net Uncut. Happy New Year to all of our listeners and watchers out there in YouTube land. It's 2015 already, and we are here with another great year of some great coaster discussions. I am, of course, Andy Rybarczyk from Chicago, Illinois.
And I'm Danny Miller, usually from Rochester, New York, but I'm home for the holidays, home on my winter break to celebrate Christmas, Hanukkah, Festivus, the New Year. So I'm in Schnecksville, Pennsylvania, right down the road from Dorney Park right now. As you can see by the different scenery, you may see about a 15-pound Shih Tzu up over my shoulder. She's at my feet right now, but our little guard dog here. So I know you have your dog is sound asleep at your feet right now.
Yeah, he's sleeping. You might hear from him later on. But hey, you're by Dorney, and up over here you can see original Banshee up in the corner, up there.
Yeah, you got your little Steel Force plush there up over your shoulder.
That's original Banshee. Okay, that's not Steel Force. Anyway.
Yeah.
Tonight's topic, though, being that it's our first show of the new year, we thought it might be a good idea to have you guys decide what we're going to talk about. And we posted a question, and it was basically ask Danny and Andy anything. So we have a whole slew of responses here tonight. We picked the best of them, and we're going to just answer your questions about what we think about the theme park industry. So I know you have the list over there, so why don't you tell us what's going on?
Yeah, I got the list over here. And, first of all, thanks for everyone who sent in questions. We got a lot. I think we're going to get through pretty much all of them. I think we're going to try and squeeze in most of them here. So the first one comes from our buddy Brian V down there in Arizona, and he's got a quick one for us. He's got kind of a this or that question. He's got, would you rather have a boomerang in your backyard, a Vekoma boomerang in your backyard, or a lifetime pass to a theme park that is hundreds of miles away if both of them were free? I'll let you go first.
Ooh, that's a good question. I'm going to go with because both of them are free.
Yeah.
See, here's what I'm thinking. I'm not going to be riding the boomerang myself, but I'm thinking to myself, how much could I sell tickets for? And could those ticket sales equate to buying a lifetime pass anyway? And then I could say that I had a roller coaster.
That's a good idea. I like that idea. A lot of people hate on those Vekoma boomerangs because they do bang your head around pretty good. But I think if I could have the new trains that are on Sidewinder at Hershey Park and Carolina Cobra, if I could have those trains on them, then I think I might take the boomerang just because it's like, hey, Mom, I'll be right back. I'm going to go outside in the backyard and ride the roller coaster real quick. Like, kind of that instant gratification. I don't have to have, like, hours and hours of driving for that when I'm probably going to a park that might have a boomerang already. So it's going to surprise some people, but I like your idea of making a profit off of it too. So
because it's free.
I think I might go with the boomerang. It is free, so I'm thinking, I might go with the boomerang in my backyard.
and I'm assuming that maintenance cost is included in the free, and also write-offs.
I hope so.
And hopefully they're good write-offs too. Like, because if I'm going to my backyard, I don't want to be given attitude in my backyard.
Right.
I'd have to fire those people pretty quickly. You know what, though? I might go with the lifetime pass, because when he says hundreds of miles...
Well, it depends on the park, too, doesn't it?
Well, he says hundreds of miles away, but technically Cedar Point is hundreds of miles away. It's about, for me anyway.
Yeah. Same thing for me. It's about 7 hours for me. So, I mean, that's, for me, it's, a couple of 100 miles.
But then again, my mom buys my season pass anyway, so it's actually be saving her money and not me money.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
man.
I guess it depends on the part. Like, I don't want a season pass to, like, Silverwood. If that's my park that's 100 miles away that has, like, 2 or 3 roller coasters, when one of them is an inverted boomerang, then I'm just going to take the boomerang in my backyard.
Or
But,
anything in Arizona, either, because I wouldn't take a season pass there.
No.
Brian B is from
man.
Arizona, so that's...
Below the belt, we're not... You don't want a season pass to Castles and Coasters?
No, I don't...
Right, Desert Storm over and over?
Yeah, I never use it. If I used it once, it would be as much as the use it gets, I think.
There you go, Brian.
Yeah, I'm gonna take the boomerang, I think.
Yeah, I think I am too. I think we're surprising people with that one. All right, now we had a couple people ask the same question, and then we had a couple people ask multiple questions. So we'll start. My Aunt Sue, she's active, on Facebook and in the consortium and on the forums from time to time, and she sent in a couple too. A defunct coaster that we haven't ridden or that we didn't ride that we would want to, and why? And I'll let you go first again.
Well, you know what?
I know you thought about this one for a while.
Because I was reading this question when she posted it, and then we were thinking about it before the show, and I just could not come up with a roller coaster. However, there's a number of things that I never experienced at a theme park that I would love to experience, and the first of them is the Triceratops encounter at Islands of Adventure. I'm a big dinosaur fan.
Yeah.
So I never got a chance to feed the Triceratops or go through that whole thing. And, it kind of taunts me every time I walk back there because I know it's still there. And I know there's a big rock or a big palm tree in front of the walkway. And I just want to walk back there and see what's in there. But I can't because it's against the rules of the park. But yeah, I would totally bring that back. And then, I'm also a big, haunt fan. And back to Islands of Adventure, there are a few haunts over there that were pretty spectacular that I thought would be really cool, like things like a Maximum Carnage Spider-Man haunted house and like a Jurassic Park Extinction haunted house. Even out in Hollywood, they had a few based on The Undertaker that people have not raved about them, but being interested in those properties, I think I'd want to go through them. So that would be my answer. Not be a roller coaster, but it would definitely be Triceratops encounter, because that's something I've always wanted to do and never got the chance to.
Right. Yeah, and it's kind of like it's like a two-sided question, but it's really two sides of the same coin. It was what defunct ride or coaster that we haven't ridden do we want to, and then which one would we bring back? And I kind of have a different answer for those two parts of the questions. I came up with 2 rides that I haven't ridden that I would want to that aren't around anymore. The first of which would be Drachenfire, not because I think it would be a great ride, but because I think it's kind of built up like legendary status since it got torn down. And we were talking off air before we started about whether or not you were at the park at one point when it was open. And we figured out that you were there in 1999.
Or
the
later.
Year that Apollo's Chariot opened. So right after Apollo's Chariot opened, but it was after Drachenfire had already closed but wasn't torn down yet, I think is what we decided on. So that's my answer for that one, or one of them anyway. Did you have thoughts on Drachenfire before you get another one?
Drachenfire was always a ride that I wanted, and like I'm kind of glad that I figured out that I wasn't actually able to ride it because, like you said, it's been built up to this legendary status of did you ride Drachenfire? Because it was only open for 7 years or something.
It was open for like 2 or 3 years, and then they took out one of the corkscrews and just replaced it with like a flat bit. Because the way that I've heard Drachenfire described is it was an extremely unique roller coaster with unique elements and unique inversions with horrible transitions placed in between. Because a lot of people don't know this, that you see how the 2 Busch parks have always had similar coasters put in and packed together years. You have Alpengeist and Montu were in back-to-back years, and you saw Griffin and Shikra 2 years apart. You saw Cheetah Hunt and Verbolten in back-to-back years. So you look at Kumbo, which opened in 93 at Tampa. Drachenfire opened in 92 and was originally, I believe, supposed to be a B&M ride. And I guess B&M didn't take the project or something happened. And then they went to Arrow, who did Loch Ness Monster, and then Python down at Busch Gardens, Tampa in the 70s. And they said, yeah, we can do that. And they basically built B&M's design, which led to the only Arrow Cobra roll that I know of. And, that unique first diving corkscrew curve on the first drop. And you had the cutback element, which really you can only do in Roller Coaster Tycoon and No Limits. You haven't seen anything. I mean, top hats are kind of like that, but not really. So it was a unique coaster that I never got to ride. That's one that I didn't get to ride. Just to say that I've ridden it, because it's kind of has this legend status. The other one that most people just assume that I've ridden because I'm from around here and I've grown up in the Eastern PA area, but that I didn't ride because I never went to the park until I went as a little kid and then didn't go for a long time until I really got into coasters, and I didn't really make my first real trip to Dorney until 2005. I never rode Hercules. And my dad, my uncle, or my aunt, my grandfather, they all rode Hercules. And that's one that they have that I'll never have unless it comes back in a different form somehow. But Hydra, and most of you know Hydra isn't my favorite ride at that park. It's not quite what you wish it could be. And if I had a choice right now, you always want what you don't have. So if I could say tear down Hydra for like a year and put Hercules back just so I could ride it, even if it was in its roughest form, I would want to do that. So those are the two defunct ones that I would want to ride. As far as the ones that I don't know that I would want to bring those back from the dead, though. The ones that I think we talked about bringing back were, I think an obvious one is Big Bad Wolf.
Yeah, for sure.
But I don't know that I would want to take out Verbolten to have Big Bad Wolf back. So, but if we could have both of them, I would do that. But I like the theming, and I kind of like that there's a tribute to the Big Bad Wolf tied into Verbolten, and then the second half of the layout is the same. And okay, it's a different coaster style, but I really like the theme building, the Black Forest, and I like the story and the queue and the story behind it. So I don't know that I would want to take Verbolten out to get the Big Bad Wolf back, but if I could somehow have them both, I would do that. I don't know. What are your did you rode Big Bad Wolf at one point, right?
Yeah, I rode Big Bad Wolf once. I remember it clearly because the line took forever because there was a protein spill on it. Yeah. But see, and I don't know because I was little when I rode Big Bad Wolf. Like that. Well, I wasn't super little. I was like grammar school, high school age, somewhere in that range. And I don't really super remember it, but I remember it being real good. Like, and I had been on, Iron Dragon at that point, and I thought it was a lot better than Iron Dragon. And, I think Verbolten, like, I understand the environmental laws and why they did what they did at Busch Gardens. But Verbolten, the most exciting part of that ride did not have to be put there. Like, you could put that anywhere, that event house. Like, that could go anywhere in your park. And the part that was outside that was actually using a lot of the footers, like dropping down to the river, I thought that was the most boring part of the ride. I thought that it was I thought it was way too slow. Coming to the full stop on the covered bridge up at the top, coming to the full stop on that, and then going down, I thought it just killed the speed of the ride. If that was done and you didn't have that complete slowdown and you did the launch up and then kept that speed down into it, I think that would probably be a pretty amazing element. But being that you come to a near stop up there, just did not do it for me. So like that part of the ride I thought could be gotten rid of. And then you could put Verbolten anywhere, and you could have Big Bad Wolf and Verbolten, and now, that's an interesting park.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that about Verbolten at first, too. I thought, why are they stopping those cars at the top of the bridge? But then the more that I got used to that, the more I kind of like it now, because you have the creaking. I mean, it's because there's theming up there, and I get that.
Yeah.
And I kind of like that it's sort of like, especially in the first car in the front row, it's sort of like the anticipation of that drop, and like you're visiting an old friend again, as Mike Collins said on Coaster Radio. It feels like you're visiting an old friend when you go back through that part of the ride. So I understand that, and
I'd rather just have the old friend back.
I wish we could have them both.
And that's what I'm saying.
Well, it's
just give
it's
me
more
the old
you
friend.
wish you could have what you don't have. I'm sure if we had Big Bad Wolf and they tore out Verbolten, we might be here singing a different tune. But
I don't know.
Maybe not for you. But the other two quick ones that I wanted to mention, it's because I think I've grown to like rough wooden coasters, and back when I rode these two, I didn't. I would want to ride Villain. Even though I've ridden it already, I want to ride Villain at Geauga Lake one more time to give it another chance, because knowing that I like Predator and I like The Boss and those sorts of rides, and I like Ghost Rider, I would want to give the Villain another shot, because I didn't like it because it was really rough, and I rode that back in high school, like early in high school. So I would want to give that one another shot. And the other one I didn't mention during pre-show here, but purely just to give it another shot now that I like rough wooden coasters, give me Son of Beast with the loop. I rode it without the loop, but give me... No, I would never take Banshee out to put Son of Beast back in, but give me one more ride on... I rode it once. Give me a second ride on Son of Beast, just to see what I think now that I've gotten used to the roughness of a lot of wood coasters. So I know I'm going to get a lot of flack for that. But
here's another one that I would want back. I know the maintenance department doesn't want back, but I want Chaos back at Cedar Point.
Yeah, he wanted Chaos back.
And you don't even have to do much. All you have to do is take out a 3-point challenge, so we don't even lose anything in that equation.
One of 4.
Yeah. The only losers in that equation is the maintenance department, because those things I hear are a complete nightmare to deal with. But yeah, Chaos at Cedar Point. Maybe even Wildcat, because I miss my Wildcat
Yeah, you were
stop.
talking about Wildcat too.
Yeah.
The nice thing is you can still go ride a Chaos if you go to Las Vegas.
That's
you
true.
go to the Adventure Dome and ride one of those for now.
And what's funny is I did not. I don't, because I was so upset.
I didn't either.
Yeah, I was so upset by it that I'm like, oh, I could ride this for free, but now I got to pay for it. Oh.
I rode El Loco again.
I wasn't there for that.
Yeah, it's a neat one. Next one from my aunt here. Favorite flat rides. This should be a quick one. Why don't we talk about some of those?
Yeah, mine. Well, I'm assuming we're excluding dark rides, because we did a whole
Yeah,
hour.
we did a whole dark ride show.
Yeah.
So let's talk about like true flat rides.
Yeah, we did a whole hour show. But my new number one flat ride that's not a dark ride is Falcon's Fury. That thing was just crazy insane. I love Falcon's Fury, and I'm not a drop tower guy. Like, I'm not one that like.
No, I know you're not.
I have not been on, even at Great America, I've not been on Giant Drop. At Kings Island, I've not been on Drop Zone. I don't do drop towers because I'm not a huge fan of them. But Falcon's Fury was so unique, because I did do Acrophobia down at Over Georgia, and I was so upset by that, because I thought that Acrophobia was going to do what Falcon's Fury did. And when it didn't, I was really upset. So then when I saw Falcon's Fury, and when Falcon's Fury came out, I'm like, oh, here we go. This is what I wanted. And it lived up to every single expectation. So,
in general, I don't ride just standard drop towers. Like, I won't ride your standard S&S tower or your standard giant drop, like the ones at Kings Island or Kings Dominion, because, like, when I go to Dorney, I can ride Dominator whenever. And that's kind of like, okay, you did it once, you've kind of done it. But the unique drop rides, like, okay, Tower of Terror, it's a drop ride, dark ride, whatever. I'll ride that. Falcon's Fury I rode, and Falcon's Fury is awesome.
yeah.
Acrophobia, knowing that it didn't do what Falcon's Fury does, I really liked Acrophobia. because you kind of felt that it was tilting a little bit, but Falcon's Fury takes it to another level. The only bad thing I'll say about Falcon's Fury is I wish you were facing the ground longer. Like, you don't really get close enough to the ground to really crap your pants. You only kind of crap your pants on the way down. But I think it's cool that they don't tilt you till you're at the top. That's interesting. So that's that. And, like, I did the S&S Tower at Marineland because it's so freaking big. And it's a 300-foot tower on top of a 150-foot hill, so you get a view of Niagara Falls at 450 feet above ground level. So that one's pretty cool. And the one in Las Vegas, obviously. Favorite flat rides, I would say probably the one at the Fun Spot that we just rode, the Air Raid, the Zamperla Air Raid or Air Races. Those things are wicked and all kinds of screwed up, because you can actually get it balanced to the point where you're upside down for a good, 5 to 7 seconds, which we did. So those are a lot of fun and really disorienting. The other one that I didn't mention when we were going over these is anything on the Stratosphere. The 3 on the Stratosphere are really cool. And if you consider those flat rides, they're flat rides 1,000 feet in the air, so why not? Those are awesome. And then a lot of the ones at Canada's Wonderland, Sledgehammer, the Shockwave, which is a top scan, Mondial top scan, which if you don't know what that is, you can kind of look at. I think I have some pictures. Maybe we'll put up a picture of a Shockwave. If not, I'll give you one that you can put up. It's kind of like a weird spider-looking thing, something that you would see in No Limits, and I think they have it in Roller Coaster Tycoon 3 too. And they have some other unique ones. They have it's not quite a roundup, but it's more like a stand-up Enterprise where you're actually in a cage called Nightmares. That one's pretty cool. They have one of the last Schwarzkopf giant Enterprises, or the UFOs, or that's what the stand-up one is, but it's a giant Enterprise where you can fit 4 people in a car, called the Orbiter, so that one's cool. They have a great flat ride collection there at that park in general. Those are just a few of them. So I would say an Air Raid, anything at the Stratosphere, or anything in Canada's Wonderland are probably some of my favorites. There's others out there. I'm a big fan of the zippers. I know I really like the zipper rides that go around to the carnivals. That's not really at any of your permanent parks, but I love the zippers. My mom's over here. She heard me talk. I used to do those with my grandfather before he passed away. We'd go to our fair down the road every year, and we would ride that over and over and over again. All right. So we talked about flat rides. Now, this was another one that my aunt threw in. She had a bunch of them. Your favorite ride designer, living or dead, or not favorite ride designer, but if you could sit down with a ride designer, who would it be, living or dead? Who would it be, and what 3 questions would you ask them? And this is one that you were kind of like, oh, I'm not so much into the whole ride designer one, so you were going to throw this one over to me. And, this one would be easy to say someone like Walter Bollinger, who I recently met at IAPA, or, someone from RMC or Gravity Group or GCI. It would be easy to say. It would be almost like a cop-out to say someone like that. So I'm going to go with someone who passed away in 1956. I'm going to say Herbert Schmeck from PTC. He designed 84 roller coasters in the early 90s, in the first part of the 90s, or 1900s, not the 90s. But the first half of the 1900s, he designed 84 coasters for Philadelphia Toboggan Company. And the 3 questions that I think I would ask him, I would first off ask him, of the 84 that he designed, if he rode them. We know Ron Toomer never rode his coasters because he got motion sickness. But if he rode them, which one was his favorite? And I don't know if that's documented somewhere, but that's something that I would want to ask him. I would want to ask him also why the Phoenix, which he would know it as the San Antonio Playland Rocket, and also the Great Escape Comet, which he would know as the Crystal Beach Comet. What makes the airtime on those 2 rides so amazing? because those two rides in particular seem to have crazier airtime than any of the other, old PTC coasters. And then the other thing I would want to ask him, if we could kind of shield him from everything that wooden coasters have become in the last, even 5 years, 10 years, with the inversions and the overbanks and the height and the speed and the topper track and all of that. I would want to ask him what he thinks the limit on wooden roller coasters would have been. Height, speed, how crazy, how intense they get. I would want to see what limits what's the farthest we can take the wooden roller coaster? I would want to see what he would say to that and say, well, did you know now they do this? And I would love to see someone like a John Miller or Herbert Schmeck or, John Al. I would love to see the reaction of those guys as to what the wooden coaster has become in the last 5 years, especially. So that would kind of be my answer for that. I think that would be neat.
Yeah, for sure. I don't have a favorite designer or designer that I would want to talk to, so.
Yeah, I know. Well, and me kind of being more of a wooden coaster guy, I think he would be neat to talk to too. So, the next one here was kind of a combination between my aunt and my mom. Could you describe your dream? What if you could describe like a dream roller coaster? What would the design be like? What kind of elements would it have? What type would it be? And what would you call it? Or what would its name be?
Mommy do.
I don't know. What do you think about this one?
I don't know. Like, I don't really get into the whole type things. Like, I've stated before, I prefer the Intamins in general. I like extended ejector airtime. The name I would call it would be, I don't know, I'm not creative like that.
Yeah.
Raptor 2. And I would...
Raptor 2.
I would just clone Raptor.
You would just... See, I was thinking about this one, and I started to think about this. And I said, you know what? I started to describe it. And I was like,
actually,
boy,
hold on.
You know what?
Hold on. I would put the Banshee trains on Raptor and call it done.
Okay, there you go.
There you go.
Right.
That's what I would do.
What I found myself doing, I found myself describing two roller coasters in particular. I found myself describing Manta, and I found myself describing Voyage.
Oh,
because there's two sides to this. And we're going to talk about this in a little bit about why Raptor and Manta are our favorites. I think if you gave me a tall, fast, intense wooden roller coaster in the woods that has a ton of airtime and a ton of directional changes, that for me is one. I don't care what you call it. I think it's less about the name than it is the logo, because I said this before Gatekeeper was actually announced. I said everyone was hating on the Gatekeeper name. I said, you know what? Gatekeeper by itself might not be a great name, but if you put a pretty wicked logo with it, it could turn out pretty good. And they came up with a nice logo for it. And it looks really, really cool. Yeah, exactly, right there above your shoulder. I mean, it all depends on the merch. And the Beast is a great name for a roller coaster, and they have a great logo to go with it. Diamondback is a really cool name. They have a great logo to go with it. Banshee is an awesome name. They have a great logo to go with it. So I think it's less about the name than it is about the logo and I think what you do with it. So as far as the name goes, I don't know that I would have one particular name in mind. I don't know. There's tons of great roller coaster names out there, I think.
Well, I think it's time that we had Beast Upside Down be a roller coaster name. What
would that end up being pronounced as, though, if you flipped Beast Upside Down?
No, it would literally be called. It'd be called Beast Upside Down.
Oh, you would just call it Beast Upside Down.
Yes.
What? Son of Beast wasn't enough for you?
Yeah, Beast Upside Down, and I'm shocked that that's not what they call Banshee. Because they could have called it Beast Upside Down.
second daughter, cousin's uncle twice removed of Beast.
Well, the lift hill's a little bit quicker on Banshee too, just a little bit.
It is. It just a little bit, especially at night. Oh boy. So I don't know. I found myself describing Voyage, but if you gave me any intense airtime laden wooden coaster in the woods that was long, then I could probably do that. Like, even if you put Shivering Timbers in the woods, right, instead of in the middle of the field, like even something like that, I would enjoy. And then we're gonna get to this. Maybe we'll jump to this right away. Sarah Meeks on the consortium asked what our favorite type of coaster is, and for me, I always lean slightly towards wood coasters in general, just because if you give me a good, intense, long, airtime-ridden wooden roller coaster, like a Voyage or like an El Toro or a Gold Striker or a Phoenix, I think those are my favorite type of coasters. But if you're talking a good wooden roller coaster, I think I would take over most steel coasters. But if you get a bad wooden roller coaster, they're really bad.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Whereas a steel coaster, with the exception of a few, like the Manhattan Express and the Mind Erasers, with the exception of like a small group of them, a steel roller coaster can only get so bad.
Yeah.
So I think as far as steel goes, my favorite type is a flying coaster, and I know that's not something I share with most people. Most people don't like the flying coasters because the restraints are uncomfortable. But if you gave me a long, big, fast flying coaster that throws you into the vest like Manta and Tatsu do, and if you give me like maybe a wing dip over some water, or give me some near misses with the trees, which Manta and Tatsu both do very well, and you give me a giant pretzel loop where I gray out when you go through it in the back seat like you do on Manta and Tatsu, I think anything like that, and give me a good queue line too, like on Manta where you go through the tanks and everything, and you go through some nice scenery. Give me that sort of thing, and that's like my dream ride right there. So I answered 2 questions there with that. So maybe you can answer what your favorite type is and go into that.
Well, I'm a big fan of the inverts, though. I think it's just in theory though, because a lot of times after I ride the inverts, I like them, but I don't super love them. Like Raptor's at the top of my list, obviously, is number 2. And we're going to talk about that later, like you said. But, Afterburn's on my list. Banshee's in my top 10. So I like them, but I don't super like them. What I find myself super liking is a steel coaster that has ejector air. So things like, or things that just do, like, a steel coaster just does crazy stuff. And to some extent, I think Maverick does have ejector air. It has the OTSRs that kind of keep you in your seat, unlike, like it kind of like holds you down a little bit. But for a lot of times, like I've said it before, but there are times on Maverick that I'm out of my seat more than I'm in it. And then Sky Rush is on that list, Iron Rattler. I think if you take the ejector parts of that, if I took the best parts of all those rides and put them together, if I took like the height of Sky Rush with the drop to the canyon of Iron Rattler and just the twists and the turns of Maverick and put those all together, you'd have a coaster.
Yeah.
You'd have a coaster.
I think the one drawback to me saying a flying coaster is you don't really have a chance for the big airtime moments, and that's the one thing that if there's one drawback for me to the Flyers is that you don't get the opportunity for the now the Superman clones and the smaller ones like the Flying Dutchmans, those are good, but they don't quite have the oomph that Manta and Tatsu have for me. But after that, I'm hyper coaster and giga coaster all the way with the airtime, like your Bizarros, your Sky Rushes, your I-305s, your B&M Hypers, even, your Leviathans, your Diamondbacks, your Behemoths, your Apollo's Chariots, all of those are I know you're looking at me funny when I mention Apollo's Chariot.
There's a few of them that you just like slide in there that I'm just like, what are you talking about?
I didn't slide in Raging Bull now. Come on.
Well, okay, I'll give you that. Granted. Granted,
okay. You got any other thoughts on that one?
No, I'm ejector error. That's what I found out.
Yeah.
I'm all ejector error. That's what I want. I want to be like riding a bull without having to actually ride an animal.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, boy. Next one here. Our buddy Kane, who we had on the show a while back, he had a question for us. Now, you and I talked about this one in advance a while, and we still really couldn't come up with an answer for it. What is the worst ride what do we think is the worst ride lineup at a big box park? And the first thing we discussed is, what are we considering big box parks? Are we excluding Disney? Because if you're talking, and he wants us to consider coasters, flat rides, dark rides, water rides, the whole 9 yards. So we're kind of getting into that the Six Flags show we did. We're kind of talking about just the ride topic for every park now. Yeah. So I think you and I kind of initially both thought the easy answer is Six Flags St. Louis, because the coaster collection is lacking after American Thunder. But when you think about it, they have one of the best flat ride collections there, and they're getting the Metropolis Dark Ride. So I don't even know that I can say Six Flags St. Louis, because where the coasters lack, everything else makes up for, because I really like that park. So another one we threw out was California's Great America, because before Gold Striker was built, it was like, well, your best coaster is an inverted coaster from 1993 that's like the shortest of the bunch, and it's good. Flight Deck is really good, but after that, it was kind of like, well, what's there? And now they have Gold Striker, so now they kind of have two signature coasters, but I mean, that's another one where it's just like they're missing a couple of things.
A clear answer to me a few years ago would have been Universal Studios Orlando. That before the addition of Gringotts and Transformers, that ride lineup was pretty poor. With like Rip Ride Rocket is a terrible. I think it's a terrible ride. I'm not a fan.
It's not spectacular. I don't think it's terrible, but it's not spectacular.
I would say terrible.
If you're not in the front row, if you're not in the front row, it jiggles you around a little bit. Yeah, I'll give you that.
And then the dark rides that they had at that time, like Mummy was a good coaster, Men in Black, but for the price that you're paying was nowhere near what you should be getting out of that park.
Yeah, and you get into value now too.
Yeah, and but now with Transformers and Gringotts, it kind of evens it out a little bit. It
really does.
It's still lacking though. I think it still needs a signature roller coaster. And I'm not saying that every park needs a roller coaster, but I think that park in particular needs a real roller coaster that operates pretty well. Obviously, the Disney parks, if you take them singly or individually, that they don't hold up very well. Animal Kingdom, pretty low. Hollywood Studios.
Animal Kingdom and Hollywood Studios are the two Disney parks that jump out initially, because at Animal Kingdom you have Everest, Dinosaur, the Primeval World Twins, and then you have the Safari, and then Cali River Rapids. So that's like, what, 6 rides? Everything else is like exhibits, right? I mean, you're getting Avatar Land, so there's going to be 2 rides over there. So, okay, maybe they kind of see that, and Hollywood, uh-oh, someone's here.
and whereas Animal Kingdom looks like it's on the upswing, Hollywood Studios, for all intents and purposes, from what we know right now for sure, looks like it's on the downswing, where they've taken out the backstage, the backlot tour. They've taken out they're talking about taking out the Indiana Jones thing, maybe even the stunt show. I don't know if that's been confirmed yet, but you're looking at a park that's going to be bare bones very quickly, unless they do something big like we've talked about before with something like Star Wars, or there's talk of Cars Land. But I think the Cars Land thing's a little bit, they missed the boat on that already. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, they took out the backlot tour, and what else closed? The stunt show?
Supposedly, the stunt show is going to close. The American Idol thing's closed already.
Yeah, and the backlot tour is gone. So when you're talking about rides there at Hollywood Studios, you have the Great Movie Ride, you have Toy Story Mania, you have Tower of Terror, you have Rock and Roller Coaster, you have Star Tours, and then you've got some exhibits, and I think there's a couple smaller rides there. But, I mean, those two parks... It's almost like Disney is in its own category where it's like, okay, but it's Disney, and how far does but it's Disney get them?
And see, and actually what I do is I rank Disney as a whole. And I don't know if that's fair, but very
it's kind of
few
like
people.
Universal, though. A lot of people kind of throw Universal together because it's almost like you don't go to one park and not the other, especially now. I don't know many people that go to one park and not the other.
Well, now they don't, but I think before this year, I think a lot of people did, because a lot of people saw that Universal Studios, that's a big skip. Like, there's no reason to, like, I went there once and I'm like, oh man, I wasted my money. I should have, there's no reason to buy that park hopper for as many days as I did. I should just, because obviously the main event is Islands of Adventure. That's where all the fun is. But Disney I've always ranked as a whole, because I think Disney especially, there's not a lot of people that go to just one park. If you did, it's Magic Kingdom. Like, I'm one of the exceptions.
And that's probably the best park for rides in that group.
Yeah, and I'm probably the exception where earlier this year, or actually last year, in January, I went to just Hollywood Studios. We had a one-day ticket for one park, and we went to Hollywood Studios to go hang out for a little bit. But I don't think that's the norm, though. I think that's the exception to the rule, where most people are going to all four. So I rank them as all four. But trying to find just one park, because we had mentioned like Michigan's Adventure, but we said, is that big enough?
Michigan's Adventure, I think, I love Shivering Timbers. I went there for the first time this year, and the SLC is pretty good. And I would say we debated about whether or not we would consider Michigan's Adventure because we talked about Great Escape. And yeah, that's a Six Flags park, but it's not a regular Six Flags park. It was kind of a small town park that Six Flags said, yeah, we'll buy it, but we're not going to really do anything with it. Michigan's Adventure, we debated if that was kind of the same thing, but I would argue that maybe Michigan's Adventure might be the answer just because they've been stagnant for so long, and their only new signature ride in the last decade has been a relocated SLC that, granted, is pretty good, but I mean, that's their newest ride. That's their only real new signature ride in like the last, since Shivering Timbers, pretty much, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
In 97. So you're really talking about, we're getting close to 20 years where they've had, two big roller coasters added. And even for a smaller park like that, that's a lot. Because you look at Valley Fair, they've had Steel Venom, Wild Thing, and Renegade all go in the last 20 years. So, I mean, even they have had stuff added. So, I would say Michigan's Adventure, not because I didn't like the park, because I thought it was an okay park for what it's supposed to be, but because it's been stagnant for so long. And I'm sure if I was a regular visitor there, I'd be even more adamant that that's what it is. But because I just went there for the first time this year, I'm hesitant to say them. But in terms of parks that are in like a Cedar Fair or Six Flags chain, I am probably going to go Michigan's Adventure. Before this, 2 years ago, maybe Great America out of California, but because they have Gold Striker now, and it seems like they're going to start doing more with that, I might give a slight edge to Michigan's Adventure on that one.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's go through Water Parkers, because he has a few quick ones here, and then we've got two that we'll probably have a little bit of a discussion on. So, Water Parker had a question for you. What was your favorite 2014 haunt?
That's an easy one, and it's the reason why I went to Horror Nights, and it's the reason why I loved Horror Nights, and that's Aliens versus Predator. That haunt,
I knew that was coming.
Yeah, it was an amazing haunt. It was everything I wanted it to be and more. And there will probably, unless they do something even crazier next year, that will probably be number one for a very long time. Yeah.
All right. Next one that Water Parker had, our best new credits that we rode this year.
You know what's funny is I was just talking. Jim Winslet on Facebook has a G-Force group, and he asked this. What credits entered your top 10 this year? And it's funny that just today that the same question came up, and I said Skyrush entered at number 3. Banshee entered at number 8, I believe, on my Steel list. And Banshee, I said, Banshee's one of those that I kind of rank lower and lower every time I write it. Then for the Wood list, Phoenix entered at number 4. El Toro entered at number 3. And Goliath entered at like 7 or 8 too, but Goliath's another one that I keep pushing down every time I write it too.
Yeah, the Great America Goliath, for clarification. Yeah. I know we talked about that a few weeks ago. Yeah, you wrote a lot of the East Coast ones that I've ridden like every year for the last 6 years. So you wrote a lot of those new ones this year. For me, I kind of have 3 here, and I'm going to pick one of those 3, but I would say Banshee for Steel Coaster. I'm also going to throw Wonder Mountain's Guardian in there just because I just love the storyline and I love how they did it. I thought it was really well done, especially for a regional park, and I hope that, Voyage to the Iron Reef, even though it's not going to be a coaster, is something similar, and I hope Cedar Point does something similar as well. But the third one that wasn't new to the amusement industry this year, but was new to me this year, was Gold Striker. And if you read my blog about Gold Striker a while back when I wrote it in the summer, Gold Striker is a serious coaster. And I know it's one of those weird ones that not a lot of people have ridden yet, but it did really well in the golden tickets because CoasterCon was up there and a lot of ace people got to ride that who vote in the golden tickets. And I think it's getting the praise it's getting from the golden ticket people is deserved. Trust me when I say that. It's better than Thunderhead. I will say that because there's a lot of people who've ridden Thunderhead that will watch us here and haven't been out to the West Coast or at least to that park and really like Thunderhead. Gold Striker is better. Now it's not worlds and worlds better, but it's slightly faster, it's slightly longer, it's more intense, it's got better head choppers, there's a better sensation of speed, you've got the tunnels, it's more twisted, doesn't quite have the terrain element, obviously, that Thunderhead does. But Gold Striker is a serious coaster.
Yeah.
Another one here, he asked, when will we get to Kentucky Kingdom and ride the world's tallest water slide? And my answer to this was, I might get to Kentucky Kingdom next year, but I'm not much of a water park guy, so I don't know that I'm going to be going on that world's tallest water slide anytime soon. How do you even pronounce that? Is it Verruckt?
That's not even the one at Kentucky. That one's at
No, that's not the one
City.
at Kentucky Kingdom. That's in Kansas City. But there's another. Yeah. The other one's at Kentucky Kingdom too. They have a big one there, right?
Yeah.
So I don't even know what the heck it's called. The one at Kentucky Kingdom.
The difference is the one in Kansas City, Verruckt, is like in a boat, and I think that the one at Kentucky Kingdom is a body slide. Shows you how much I paid.
Okay.
I think it's a body slide. I'm not positive. I have no idea.
Even know. Sorry, Water Parker. We're not water park people, so we might get to Kentucky Kingdom next year, but I don't know if we're going to be riding waters. See, my only trip I made to Holiday World, it was pouring rain. I don't even know if the water park was open because it was Labor Day weekend and it was raining. So I will go into the water park when I go back to Holiday World because I may go for Hollywood Nights. Yeah. But I don't know that I'm going to any other water parks.
Yeah,
sorry.
It's on my list of It's not on my bucket list. Let's put it that way. Or my bucket of water
Rocket
list.
is not on my bucket.
My bucket of water list.
Yeah. Last one from him. I think this is directed at you because you're not a fan of the Beast. For our Ohio listeners, he says, "What's better for you, a dragon wagon or the Beast?"
Dragon wagon? Come on.
And you're going with the, of course you are.
That's a simple answer. Simple questions.
Oh, come
get simple
on.
answers. Move on.
Yeah, I know. You and your hate on the Beast. I don't get it. I don't get it. It's not. I'm telling you, it's not the best one in the world. I'm not saying that, but I don't get why you don't like it at all. You don't like it at all.
I think I don't like it at all because so many people love it and overrank it so much, and I think it needs to be brought down to
just
speed.
Out of spite.
Yeah, out of spite.
You're just compensating for everyone else. All right. Last few here. Steel Rock. Now he's got two here. Let's start with the other one first. What do we think are the best and worst family coasters? And then he also wants to talk to us about riding kiddie coasters. My mom's in the background. I tricked her and a bunch of the other parents I think I told this story on an earlier show. I tricked a bunch of them and the parents to go on Verbolt, and then I was like, oh yeah, it's a family coaster, and the blood-curdling screams when the free fall track dropped was priceless. And then the look when they came back to the station, it's like like one of those faces.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you can call Verbolt and the family coaster, I would say that one. Just because it's got some intense moments to it. I think in general you could call it a family coaster, but it's an intense little coaster.
I think it's tough to say because like the line between family coaster and real coaster is so like where's that line? So we said Freedom Flyer at Fun Spot.
Yeah.
Is that a family coaster? Is that a real coaster? I think that's a real coaster at some point. It's just smaller. It's just less intense. Like you said, Verbolten, I think the park portrays that as a family coaster. I think I would, it's just this line. Now, if you want to talk kiddie coaster, now we have, and my favorite kiddie coaster is actually the Jungle Twist out at the Wisconsin State Fair. It's a traveling coaster, and it's just a simple little, layout that takes you around in a circle, but the cars are free spinning. And if you can get a little kid next to you, you can get some massive spin time on that. And that was probably, I thought the little kid next to me was going to throw up. That's how bad it was. Like, it was a legit coaster. So that was my favorite.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it really kind of goes back to where you draw the line between family coaster. I think the best example of a real family coaster that I've seen, and I wrote it this year, is Fire Chaser Express.
Oh,
I think that is a perfect family coaster. It's got 2 or 3 intense moments where, okay, you feel you getting pushed into your seat a little bit, and you get some launches that are like 16 and 20 miles per hour, I think, are the 2 launches. They're not very fast. Top speed is like 35 miles per hour. Maximum negative G's is negative 0.1 as they stay in the station. So you get a little bit of airtime if you're a thrill seeker, and you get some good theming, and it's not it's not that fast. It's not that tall. It's got a little bit of a drop to it, but not too bad. It's something that I enjoy riding and that I rode multiple times, but I could also go on with a 6 or 7 year old who would probably still enjoy it too. So lots of little kids who are probably 5, 6, 7 years old going on that ride and loving it. So I think that might be probably the perfect family coaster if you're talking about that. As far as the kiddie coasters go, the old high-speed thrill coaster, which isn't around anymore, that was at Knoebels where Cosmos Curves is now, they used to crank the chain lift speed up. They used to crank it up to 12, and you used to get like ejector airtime going over the top of the lift hill, and they would send you around like 4 or 5 times, and you would get a ton of airtime on this little dinky coaster that was built in the 50s. And the only reason I'm sure they tore it out is because it was so old and was beat up. Cosmos Curves is a good replacement too. But in terms of kiddie coasters, I mean, I've been on a lot of them. My view on that, he wanted us to talk about how many, like, kiddie coasters we've ridden, and I'll ride anything once.
Yeah.
Okay, so Mr. Chester's a new guy on our forums, and he's been active, so hopefully he'll stay involved with us too. He wants us to talk about, do we think that certain parks should label a couple of rides as permanent and kind of like unclosable rides, or rides that will never be torn down, or are we more with the out with the old in with the new method is best? And if so, do we have some candidates for rides that should be retired?
And I think it's hard to say that a ride is unclosable because you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
A malfunction could happen. They could simply run out of parts at one point. So it's really hard to say that a ride's unclosable because at some point in a million years, the ride's probably going to have to be closed down because there's no humans left or something. So, but barring that, like, it's really hard for me to sit here and think about, like, is like Magnum ever going to close? Like, we're 25 years in, and Magnum's one of those classic pieces of history that some of the coasters that are contemporaries of Magnum have already closed down, have been torn down, have become scrap metal. But yet, I don't see Magnum ever closing. Like, I could imagine the uproar that would happen if Magnum did close.
They would march on Sandusky if they ever tore out Magnum.
Oh my goodness! Like,
they would be going underneath gatekeepers' keyholes with torches and pitchforks if they ever decided to do that.
Like, even something to a lesser extent of like something like Gemini, like, oh my God, like Gemini, like it doesn't have the historical significance that Magnum has.
Not quite.
There's significance there. It's the tallest in 78 or whatever, but it's one of those classic Cedar Point rides that, man, I don't know if it falls under untouchable, but there would be a huge outcry if they were to tear that down. And I'm sure there's rides like that at every park.
Yeah, and I think the discussion that we kind of had when we were trying to form our answers for these earlier was, where does the historical significance become enough to keep you from tearing it down? Because I mentioned Kennywood, and it's like, well, you have 3 wooden roller coasters from the 1920s at Kennywood that are all in still pretty good shape. Are any of those untouchable? Well, yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
The Coney Island Cyclone, that's a National Historic Landmark. That doesn't mean you can never tear it down, but it's a lot harder to. If the Coney Island Cyclone goes to hell and becomes really, really rough in 20 years, are people going to say, okay, tear it down? I don't know if that's one you can. That's one of the most famous coasters in the world. I don't know if you could ever tear that one down. It's a lot like, let's say 100 years into the future. Will they ever tear Millennium Force down? It's unthinkable it's unimaginable to think that would ever be a question, but I'm sure when they built Magnum, and for how many years was that the #1 steel coaster? And the fact that we're even discussing it and thinking, well, maybe one day they might do it, I don't know. I think it's funny because candidates for retirement, I think the easiest answer here is Mean Streak, in the sense of Texas Giant. Oh, we're going to retire it. It's being retired, but it's being reborn as the new Texas Giant. Okay,
do you think
RMC
Here's a question, since it's Ask Danny Anything. Do you think people would be as quick, the answer just might be yes, but would people be as quick to tear down Mean Streak if they knew it was being completely razed and nothing was going there? Like, it's not getting the Iron Horse. There are quite a few people that have said, put the torch to it. I don't care. But I think there's another segment
of it.
Yeah, I think there's another segment that's like,
See, I think if you told people, if you said we can't Iron Horse it, we either got to keep it as is or we got to tear it down altogether, I think less people would say tear it down completely. I think more people would say keep it as is. Now, obviously, I think almost everyone would say Iron Horse it, but I think significantly less people would say tear it down completely than they would say Iron Horse it. If nothing was going in its place, if nothing was going in its place and it was just going to be an empty plot of land for a while, keep it. Obviously, but if they're going to put something there, it kind of depends on what's there. You know what I mean?
That's a good question.
That's tough without knowing the answer.
See, I would disagree with you. I think more people would still say burn it as quickly as possible. Like, I think they would not care what if you would put a parking lot there. I think people would still say tear it down.
See, 5 years ago and 10 years ago, I think you would be right. But I think with some of the recent work that's done to it, I think Mean Streak has gotten better the last couple of years. You know what I mean?
It's still that brake run on the first drop. Like, it's
the brakes on the first drop are still a downer, but it's better than it was 5 years ago.
Yeah, it's still not good though. That's the problem.
It's still not great, but
it's very pretty.
Better than it was.
If it was an ugly ride, it would have been gone 10 years ago. But because it's so beautiful on the lake at night, and even during sunset, you can get some great pictures of Mean Streak, and it just looks nice. If it wasn't so pretty, it'd be gone, but that's
Yeah. Well, and the other one that I thought of real quick was maybe something like a Viper at Darien Lake just to get something new in there. But then I said, well, that was the first roller coaster to have 5 inversions. So we go back to how much historical significance is enough to save it. Like, I think the first real hyper coaster will save Magnum for years and years to come, but then it's like Corkscrew at Cedar Point. That was the first coaster to have 3 inversions, I think, right? So
Corkscrew's going to be saved.
Okay.
Corkscrew's going to be saved by its midway appeal versus what it actually is.
Right. So, I mean, you talk about, the first corkscrews to go over a midway. Like, okay, that's historical, but at the same time, is that enough to save it? I don't know. No. Then you have the first coaster with 4 inversions, which I think was Carolina Cyclone, and that's still around. And then you have Darien Lake's Viper, which is the first to 5, and Vortex at Kings Island was the first to 6. And then you talk about the Aero Tumor triplets, the 7-looper triplets. 3 of those are gone, including the original one. So the first coaster with 7 inversions isn't around anymore. So the obvious answer is how much is enough to save a ride like that? And I think Gemini might be like the border where at one time it was a record, it was the tallest and fastest. So maybe something like that will save it for at least a little bit.
Yeah, I think it depends on the ride, like you said, that if it's still a good ride and people have an emotional attachment to it. I don't know many people that have an emotional attachment to something like Corkscrew or something like Viper, that there's no connection there. So when it goes, it goes. But
unless it was like a personal milestone, like, it was my first looping roller coaster. And I think Corkscrew at Cedar Point is in particular just because it was so early on. But I think something like a Darien Lake Viper, it was built in the mid-'80s. Not a lot of people have an emotional attachment to that.
And to be honest, the Cedar Point Corkscrew is mainly an icon because of its location, because it's such an iconic photo that people have taken every year for years upon years. And to go back to that, you look at something like Six Flags Great America with the Whizzer Shockwave debate, that when they were putting in Superman, originally it was supposed to go in Whizzer's spot. They were going to take out the Whizzer, which was a Schwarzkopf. Nothing special going on there, a classic coaster. And people opted, they said, no, save the Whizzer. But when it meant that Shockwave. Yeah, when Shockwave was going to bite the bullet, there was not a march on Six Flags for that one. So it doesn't matter about, the so much, the history behind the ride. It's the love of that ride that's going to save it. And I think that's what's going to help things like Magnum. So what's our last question here?
And Magnum has a lot of fans, too. Oh. you and I are 2 of them, definitely. All right, so we got one more here, and I think we saved this one for last because It's a very interesting topic that nobody's really asked us, surprisingly. Our buddy Steel Rock, he wants to know, why are Raptor and Manta our number one steel roller coasters? He says they're good rides, but in terms of inverts, he thinks Montu, Afterburn, Alpengeist, and Banshee are all better coasters. And now I agree with that. But then you'll say the same thing about Manta and other coasters. So he wants to know. So why don't you explain Raptor first? Because that's very famously your favorite steel coaster.
Well, I'm going to title this piece "In Defense of Raptor." That'll be the name of my paper here. So
and your new Twitter page.
I am the new leader of the new Raptor universe. So if you want to learn about dinosaurs, basketball teams, or roller coasters named Raptor, follow us at Raptor Universe or like us on Facebook.
All two of them.
Actually, there's a lot of Raptor.
And the clone.
But surprisingly, in China and overseas, there's a lot of Raptor roller coasters right now.
Isn't there a Raptor attack somewhere, too?
Yes, in England. And there's also a new Intamin being built over in the Middle East that's supposedly going to be really awesome. That's that's going to be a Raptor ride as well. So that Twitter is going to be blowing up pretty soon. So get on the bottom floor.
Yeah,
but anyway, yeah. Anyway, Raptor, I'm not going to deny that there's sentimentality. That Raptor was the first ride at Cedar Point that was built when I was a kid. That was a big ride. That I started going to Cedar Point in 1992. So obviously Raptor was the first big installation at the park for me. And it was the first big coaster that I really, really loved. And I loved the name. I love the colors of it. I love the logo of it. I love the ride itself. So that plays into it. I also love inverts. That I've said that earlier on the show, that I love inverts. That I rode Batman. I thought it was great, but I thought it was too short. So Raptor then takes that to a new level. And even to this day, I still think Raptor holds up pretty well when you start talking about inverts. That I think inverts became too based on inversions. That when you look at things like Montu and Afterburn and even Banshee now, that they're trying to like tie and break inversion records, and I don't think that's the beauty of the invert. I don't think it's to go upside down. I don't think that's the best thing that it can do. Yes, is it part of what it can do? Absolutely. But I think Raptor really balances what an invert can do or should do. And you have the first loop, you have some 0G rolls, you have the Cobra roll, but you also have that awesome helix at the end that shows you the power of the ride. And to me, I think Raptor balances it. I don't want to have to – I think the problem with Montu is that it flips you upside down 7 times. I think that that becomes the only thing that it can do, that you lose sight of all the other stuff that it does because those elements are so overpowering in the ride. Whereas with Raptor, the elements I think are just perfectly placed throughout the ride. And you have an inversion – then you have a little something else, and you get a little bit more inversion. You have a little something else. You get a little more inversion. Is it a perfect ride? No, absolutely not. But I think for inverts, I think B&M got it right that second time out. I think Batman showed what it can do. I think Raptor improved upon that, and I think since then it's become a broken record with inversions. Let's do 7, let's do 8, let's do 12, let's do 15, and I think we've seen with coaster polls and all of that people don't necessarily like inversions. So if people don't like inversions, then Raptor is a really good ride because it doesn't have a lot of them. So that's my defense of Raptor, that I still think that, yes, there's sentimentality, and if people can rank the Beast as number 1 wooden coaster, then I can rank Raptor as a number 1 steel. I'm sorry. If you can sit there and look me straight in the face and tell me that the Beast is a number 1 wood coaster and be in complete honesty about it, then I can look you right back in the face and tell you that Raptor is a number 1 steel roller coaster and not feel silly at all.
Mm-hmm. Sure. No, I understand. And I know exactly where you're coming from because I have the same kind of defense to put up. For me, it goes back to, number one, me being a big fan of the flying coasters in general. I think just the concept of a flying coaster and facing the ground and not seeing the track. Okay, wing coasters, nothing above, nothing below you. Inverted coasters, nothing below you. On all of those, you see the track. On the flying coasters, you don't really see the track unless you're trying to. Mm-hmm. And all the others, you don't really have to try to see it. So it's almost like a surprise, even though you see the ride and you see what it does. I think anyone who's ridden a B&M flying coaster in the back seat, particularly Manta or Tatsu, when you go through that pretzel loop and you get pinned to your seat and glued to your seat for like 5 straight seconds, and who knows how many G's you're pulling, and that's a rush for me. And something like that particular moment and that particular element might be the only thing that compares to ejector airtime for me, just because I think it's that intense and it's that thrilling. And then the rest of the ride with Manta, for me, is it has pretty decent speed. So when you're going, and the turns are tight. So you're going through these turns, and I think Tatsu is a bit more drawn out, which is maybe why I prefer Manta to Tatsu. Manta's elements are a bit tighter. So when you're going through the turns high above the trees, and you're not much higher than the trees, you feel like you could reach your arms out and touch the top of the trees. You're being thrown into the vest, but the vest isn't uncomfortable like it might be where it's harder, like the OTSRs on like a Maverick, for example. They're the soft, flexible kind, and they're not like the wing coaster vest where they lock. They child lock is what you and I have come to call it. They are slightly flexible. So you do get that sensation of being thrown around a little bit that I like getting on the wood coasters. And you get on your more intense, inverted coasters. So I like that feeling. And then couple it with the wing dip at the end, where I always sit on the right side of Manta so that I can reach down and get splashed by the water jet effect. But if you sit on the left side too, you go past that rock formation with the waterfall, and you get sprayed by the waterfall, and it feels like you're going to hit that rock formation. You're a little farther away from it on the right edge, so there's a little give and take there on Manta. And so even in the same row, you can sit on right edge, left edge, and it's a little different. So that's my defense of the ride itself. You put the theme and the cue around it, and even from not riding the ride, Manta is one of the few coasters that I could spend a lot of time just looking at and watching. I think Gatekeeper is another one of those. I think Gatekeeper, you could stand around and watch it from all kinds of different angles and just really appreciate what it does as a ride. I think Skyrush is another one of those too. You could stand on that little path by the river and just watch Skyrush do cycles for a long time, and just kind of get a little thrill just by watching it each time it goes through. Especially like the wing dip, like that's one of the most, in the last 5 years, that's one of the most widely photographed pictures of a roller coaster. It's Manta's train dipping down along the lagoon and the water splashing up, just like Gatekeeper's keyholes. So I think when you put that into it, and then the queue where you go past all the fish and the ray tanks, and it almost feels like it completes the experience. You go to Universal and Disney, and you get these highly themed experiences. We talked about this when we went way back to an old show when we talked about Cedar Point and Europa Park. Cedar Point has the great roller coasters, and then you have Disney and Universal that have the great theming, but maybe don't have the numbers of a roller coaster like Cedar Point does. Manta is kind of like because, it's a bush park, but Manta kind of steps it up a bit where you have the highly themed queue, but then you tack an amazing roller coaster on the end of it rather than just more of a family coaster like you might with, not to say Space Mountain or Expedition Everest is a family coaster because, they are somewhat intense, but you tack on a really amazing, a really intense roller coaster onto the end of a really immersive and beautiful queue and just a wonderfully themed area. And I think all those things considered, if I were to vote on a best roller coaster, maybe I don't put Manta at the top. Maybe I put a Maverick or a Bizarro or a Skyrush at the top. But when we're talking about my favorite, I'm talking about Manta. And I think you said the same thing about Maverick and Raptor. If you were to vote for a best, you might cast your vote for Raptor or Maverick first. But when you're talking about your favorite, when there's a little bit of sentimental value in there, when I rode Manta the first time, I was incredibly surprised because I was expecting a Superman-type ride and got so much more. And every time I've gone back, I've liked it more and more. And just having ridden it again last month, same exact result. Just liked it more than I did last year. So you talked about ranking rides lower and lower the more you ride them. Manta is one of those that I like more and more as I ride, and I think you're kind of the same way with Raptor.
Yeah, I could sit on Raptor all night. Like, I have. I have. Like, when there's nights when there's nobody in the park and they don't make you get off and go around. You just sit in the back row and have fun, and 6-7 times later, you're still having fun.
Give me the thumbs up. Let's go again. I'm good. Let's go.
Well, I think with that, we're going to end this week's show. So we'd like to thank all of you guys and gals for contributing some great questions to us. And hopefully you enjoyed our answers, That's what we're all about. So keep those questions coming, though, and we'll try and integrate them onto future shows. We'll we got some great topics lined up for 2015, and we're just getting started here with COASTER-net Uncut. So, please keep watching, come back every week, and we try and give you the best that we have. So Happy New Year. Welcome to 2015. And as always, I'm Andrew Barczyk from Chicago, Illinois.
And I'm Danny Miller from Schnecksville, Pennsylvania, not Rochester, New York.
And as always, ride on, Ride Warriors.
Happy New Year. See you next time.